You're listening to the B3 Radio Network, Southern California's internet talk station. Visit us online at b3radionetwork.webs.com. Subscribe to our podcast feed on YouTube, Facebook, iTunes, Twitter, and blip.tv. The following broadcast contains comments and opinions that belong to the individuals who presented them. They do not represent the views of B3 Production Studios, the B3 Radio Network, any sponsor or paid advertiser. Any story, picture, document, or video used in the following presentation is not directly intended to offend or cause damage to any one group, individual, or company. B3 Production Studios and the B3 Radio Network would like to thank you for your cooperation. Please enjoy the following presentation. Thank you.
In a world where car companies are numbered in the hundreds, Chevrolet, Pontiac, Honda, Mitsubishi, GMC, Lotus, Toyota, Acura, Ford, Lexus, you need to know the facts, the latest information for everything about cars, trucks, motorcycles, and ATVs. This is Speed.
Chevrolet introduces an all-new compact crossover SUV. The Google driverless robot car gets its driver's license in Sin City. Buick reserves an old trademark nameplate, the Riviera Buick. Is it coming back? And of course, vehicle recalls of the deadly kind. All these stories and more on this episode of Speed, only on the B3 Radio Network, Southern California's internet talk station. I am your host, Brian Bombarios. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to check out the website at b3radionetwork.webs.com. That's b3radionetwork.webs.com. And don't forget, we are streaming live Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Pacific Time. If you can't catch us live, don't forget about the podcast. You can check that out at the website again, and we are on YouTube, Facebook, iTunes, Twitter, and blip.tv. And don't forget, you can always call. Right now, the phone lines are not working. We have a technical issue, but the voicemail is still up and recording, so you can call anytime you want at 626-532-7154. That's 626-532-7154. Or you can always email the show at speedradiob3@yahoo.com. Now let's get right on track here with our first story of the night. Google's self-driving Toyota Prius gets its driver's license in Nevada, out of all places. Now, Nevada became the first state in the United States to grant licenses to autonomous cars. Now, autonomous cars are vehicles that do not require or do not have an actual human being behind the wheel. And cars of that nature are only hired by research companies or private investors. They are not meant for commercial civil use, at least not yet. Last year, the Nevada Assembly passed a legislation that paved the way for the state to be the first in the United States to formally license autonomous vehicles, as opposed to just licensing vehicles like the way that California does it is that vehicles in the United States, at least for California's government, is that they can license a vehicle, a driver's license, but it's pretty much to a person and not the car. It's sort of a hearsay of legislative ring-arounds. It's more or less the vehicles that you see on the road that are meant for first responder, like police vehicles, or emergency vehicles like ambulances or fire trucks. They'll usually say on the license plate, Cal exempt. That is a state-given driver's license for a car, but it still requires a human being. Nevada, in this case, has given this car its own driver's license with no human, government, or any company nameplate on it. Pretty much this car is its own being. Now, what that means is that Nevada gets to control when this car can be on the road and where it can go. Google's autonomous Toyota Prius, along with a handful of other self-driving vehicles, has been testing for some time now. This isn't just the first time, and this isn't the first wave. This has been about maybe 5 years in the working. But Nevada statutes now formally recognize autonomous vehicles, and they can regulate where they go and being tested. While the cars themselves are driverless, Nevada law still speculates and still wants that two passengers that is, need to be in the car. So if a car is on the road being tested and is driving by itself, there still needs to be somebody in the driver's seat and somebody somewhere else in the car. So either on the passenger seat on the right or one of the rear seats if the vehicle is equipped with rear bench seats. And while the car is able to do that, it needs to be in the driver's hands. So even though the car is driving itself, that person or persons in the vehicle need to be able to take control of the car. And there is some other things too, is that the car is a machine. It's only as smart as the people that program it are. Now, here's the other thing, is that the car may be licensed to its own, but the company or people driving the vehicle are still responsible for any liability or any citations or fines that the car may inquire during driving itself. So if the car happens to run a red light and it doesn't know it, or for whatever reason it doesn't detect that, the human gets the ticket. It's not the car. So there's no ring around that. If it's speeding on the freeway or speeding on the highway, or if it happens to kill school children, it doesn't matter. The human ends up getting the ticket or citation. And this must all be reported to DMV, all accidents of any kind. I know in California that if it's a $750 or more damage to property and or persons, you must report it to either an insurance company or make a police report. In this case, it does not matter what the amount is, even if it's $1 or 50 cents or $1,000 or $1 million, the car must be reported in an accident. The Nevada DMV, the Department of Motor Vehicles, said in a statement that licensing occurred after the DMV officials rode along the Google Toyota Prius. So pretty much, when you're taking a driver's license in normal civil world for us, you have somebody that sits in the passenger seat with a clipboard, makes you nervous as heck, and is pretty much watching your every move. Pretty much making sure that you're not going through red lights, that you're stopping at all intersections, that you're not doing what is known as a California roll, where you don't completely stop before you make a turn or proceed at a stoplight or a stop sign. All those kind of things that are violations in pretty much everyday life. This car had to go through that exact same thing. I don't know if the car got nervous or not. Hopefully the computer didn't crash, but I don't think so, because it would have been in the story. But either way, the DMV, I think that may have been an odd day for somebody at the Department of Motor Vehicles to have to get into the car and sit there and have to grade the car, and I don't know who gets the test and whether the car cares. But other information is that while the autonomous vehicles can only be licensed for testing right now, only to businesses or research organizations, Nevada law is also paving the way to add green AU plates. Now, I didn't mention this earlier, but this vehicle is the first of its kind to have what they call an AU plate, an autonomous unit plate. There's a brand new license plate issued in the United States, and for Nevada especially, it's getting its own license plate. And that's because it's an autonomous vehicle and it needs to be cleared. So pretty much it's a red license plate that has an infinity symbol, and then it has the letters AU. And in this case, because this car is the first one in the United States and the first one in Nevada, the state of Nevada, to have it, it's labeled as 001, 001. So this is the first vehicle ever, and that's the first license plate like that issued. But there is sort of a demeaning undertone that it seems like in the future Nevada is expecting these type of vehicles to not only belong to research companies or businesses, but hopefully one day end up in your own private driveway. That's right, Nevada is making license plates. It's not 100% clear whether they know it to be, but in the future, this has been the wave of the future for the last 10 years. The autonomous vehicle, especially by General Motors and Ford, has been in the works of the thinking tubes of engineers for the past decade or so. And it's not that far away from actually happening. It's just the technology needs to be tested and thorough, so that way there's not any chance of crashing or any loss of life or major incidences, because then the company, the manufacturer like General Motors or Ford, is reliable. But at this time, only major businesses and, of course, the big conglomerate Google is able to do these type of things, research companies. But while the autonomous vehicle can only be used for those reasons, there is sufficient evidence that in the future, private citizens will be able to hopefully one day get their own autonomous car. And the statement where I got this from is from actually a Google spokesman that said they are excited to receive the first testing license for the self-driving vehicle in Nevada, adding that it believes that the state's framework is the first of its kind and will help speed the way toward delivery of technology that will make driving safer and more enjoyable. Now, I completely disagree with that. If you're a car enthusiast of any kind, you will realize that this is a horrible, evil monstrosity that nobody wants. You do not want autonomous cars. It takes the fun out of driving. Now, maybe for the everyday commoner person that, buys Toyota Corollas or, the regular passenger vehicles of every day, yes, then it makes a lot of sense to, get in your car, read your newspaper while your car is driving you to work, and then when you get to work, by that point, it'll probably be an electric vehicle. You plug it in, or either you gas it up, or whatever you need to do. You go into work, then you come out, and your car is ready for you. Then you just get in the car. You can either take a nap, or eat, or do whatever you want. Watch TV. Your car takes you home. But for car enthusiasts like myself, and probably the majority of the people listening to this show, this is not a fun era. I mean, how boring would it be to go off-roading with an autonomous vehicle? It makes no sense. Now, of course, that would probably never happen, at least I hope not. But with cars that are on the highway and the streets, this is a bad sign. And just for me, on a personal level, this is where I think you draw the line. But you be the choice. In other news, GM trademarks the Buick Riviera nameplate. But the more important part is that should the Buick Riviera come back? Now, for those of you who do not know what the Buick Riviera is, well, first of all, Buick is a division of General Motors. Buick is the lowered down luxury version of GM. Now, GM is General Motors. They are one of the big three major American auto players in the market today. And Buick is, as of right now, one of the 4 surviving brands from GM. GM currently has Cadillac, which is their main luxury brand, which happens to be on the top of their list. Then there is Chevrolet, which is their everyday commoner vehicle, based toward businesses, everyday transit and all that kind of stuff, and private vehicles. Then there's GMC, where they make high-grade professional trucks and vans for pretty much more commercial use, but they are available as civil as well. And Buick, not at the bottom of the list, but they are the lowered luxury brand. And they were there was about 9 different brands that GM had during the 2009 bankruptcy, and they chose to keep Buick. For whatever reasons, they had their own. But the Buick Riviera was first launched in 1963, and it was successfully, continuously from 1963 till 1993 made. It had about 7 generations of change in that time. Then they brought it back after a 2-year hiatus in 1995 and brought it back in 1999 for its 8th and final generation. Now, the main story is that automakers frequently do try to cash in on nostalgic old nameplates, that is. Chrysler, for example, brought back the Chrysler 300, the Bentley-looking car that some of you complain about, and the Dodge Charger, for instance, and the Dodge Challenger, and the Camaro even came back, even though that wasn't really discontinued. But other vehicles like the Dodge Dart, where they were discontinued long ago, like the 70s, and then they come back as full-fledged new remodeled models. Also the Pontiac GTO, the Gran Turismo Alamogordo, also did that in 2004 after being absent since 1972's Pontiac Judge GTO. But this, for example, is those list of cars that came back, and whether they were successful or not is another story, and I'll just leave it at that. But the Buick Regal might be coming back. According to GM Insider News, which is a great website for everything GM, GM is set to cash in on the historic nameplate yet again, having filed a trademark for the Riviera nameplate. That isn't the first time the automaker has toyed with bringing back the Riviera marquee, though. In 2007, at the Shanghai Auto Show, GM introduced a well-received Buick concept. And a concept is pretty much, just a vehicle that is... It's the prototype. It's a one-of-a-kind that just gives you a general idea. Now, prototypes are usually overdone. They have gigantic wheels that would never be in mass production. They have swoopy lines, very curvatured. They're very aerodynamic. They usually look a little far-fetched and a little too futuristic. And by the time, if the vehicle is even brought to market, it looks completely different. Only very few example of vehicles that have ever made it from concept stage to production stage, almost untouched. Mainly, the main car that just comes to mind is the refreshed Camaro from 2009. If you look at the Camaro and the production version of the Camaro and the concept version, very few things changed. The main thing you can tell right off the bat is the side rear mirrors. Those are pretty much the only thing that ever changed. But anyway, in any case, GM's trademark of the Riviera now could mean a few different things. One, possibly that Buick is planning to show off a new Riviera concept in the near future at maybe one of the auto shows, and that could be previewed for a Buick Halo car. Now, what I mean by that is that Buick might be getting a rear-wheel drive model soon, and they might be saving that as the Riviera, and the Riviera would be taking over the Regal as their nameplate vehicle, as the town car for Lincoln was for so many years. And I think right now it's the MKS or the MKZ that's currently Lincoln's flagship model. But this is just a rumor, but it's mainly just a concept of whether old nameplates should come back or whether they shouldn't. It's pretty much just testing the grounds on seeing whether the Buick Regal would be successful in a marketplace where older names are coming back. The Dodge Dart is back, the Challenger is back, the Regal, being discontinued for a couple of years, is back, the Camaro is back. I mean, there's a lot of cars that are back and they are successful. But I'll leave that idea to you. That, again, is just a rumor. We're going to take a break. This has been Speed, the only show about cars, trucks, motorcycles, and ATVs. We'll be right back. This is the B3 Radio Network, Southern California's internet talk station. Hey, this is Brian, host of Speed, the only show about cars, trucks, motorcycles, and ATVs. Don't forget that we now stream the show live Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Pacific time. That's right, we stream it live. But if you're not able to catch the show then, don't forget that we have the podcast feed. You can subscribe any way you want on YouTube, Facebook, iTunes, Twitter, or even blip.tv. Or you can check out the website at b3radionetwork.webs.com. That's b3radionetwork.webs.com. So go ahead and check it out right now. Don't forget, Speed streams live here every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific time, only on the B3 Radio Network, Southern California's internet talk station.
Speed, give me what I need, yeah.
You're listening to the B3 Radio Network, Southern California's internet talk station. Visit us online at b3radionetwork.webs.com. Subscribe to our podcast feed on YouTube, Facebook, iTunes, Twitter, and blip.tv. We now return to Speed, the only show about cars, trucks, motorcycles, and ATV. Only on the B3 Radio Network, Southern California's internet talk station.
I said speed, speed, give me what I need. I said speed.
Welcome back to Speed, the only show about cars, trucks, motorcycles, and ATVs. Don't forget, you can leave us a voicemail anytime you want at 626-532-7154. That's 626-532-7154. Or you can always email the show at speedradio b3@yahoo.com, or check out the website at b3radionetwork.webs.com. That's b3radionetwork.webs.com. Or if you can't catch the show live, which now streams Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Pacific time, you can always get the podcast available on the website as well through YouTube, Facebook, iTunes, Twitter, and blip.tv. Now, back when I mentioned earlier in the show that Chevrolet is introducing a new compact crossover, and they're calling it the Trax, the TRAX. Now, Chevrolet will be introducing the Trax compact crossover at the Paris Motor Show this September, although the Trax is scheduled to go on sale in 140 different countries. Chevrolet will not be bringing the new model to the United States, and I'll explain later. But Chevrolet Trax isn't a huge surprise, given that in March we saw a patent drawings. These were drawings that Chevrolet had introduced into the patent region. For the United States, you have to enter patents in order to save your logo and all that kind of stuff. But they entered patents previewing a Chevrolet badged crossover that was based off of the new 2013 Buick Encore. Now, the Encore is a compact SUV crossover, which is what we're talking about, but Chevrolet is making their own version. The car has also been reskinned for the European markets as an Opel Mokka. Now, what does that mean? Well, Chevrolet has partnerships in other countries. It's sort of what Nissan and Toyota and everybody, mainly I will say Subaru mainly does this, and what's the other one? Subaru and Mitsubishi used to do it a lot, especially in the 1990s with Dodge. Now, what this means with the Opel marquee is that GM is an American car manufacturer, so they have all their parts and all their factories here. So there's no need to buy other parts or use other parts from different automakers. So what they will do is when they're in Europe, because they don't want to build a new facility to manufacture complete new parts, because import would be too much. If they make the parts here, then take them all the way across seas or via airplane or by a ship or a boat or whatever have you, it would cost too much money and they would make less on the return. So what they do is that the car companies over there, which they have a partnership with Opel, which is a European car manufacturer, or at least they supply parts to European facilities out there for European vehicles. What GM will do is contract those outside sources to say, hey, we need steering wheel columns and we don't want to make them or ship them in. We'll just buy your parts and then we'll put them in our vehicles. That's how they save money. But they will be using that, and so it'll pretty much be a rebadged Chevrolet over there. It will be a Chevrolet over there, but it will be a rebadged Opel Marca. The version is to help General Motors sell the tracks in what they call so-called emerging markets, such as Asia, South America, and so on. Chevrolet confirms that the tracks won't be sold in the U.S. because it allegedly infringes on the territory of their other SUV crossover compact, which is called the Equinox. Now, the Equinox is Chevrolet's smallest vehicle, one of their smallest vehicles. I won't say it's the smallest, but in the SUV crossover category, it is the smallest SUV they have, or the SUV crossover, I should say. So by introducing the tracks and not killing off the Equinox, which is selling pretty well right now, which wouldn't make sense to kill off a very well-selling vehicle, it doesn't make any sense to put two competing vehicles that are in the same class category and trying to sell them at one. So it's pretty much like putting two. It doesn't make any sense to do that. It's financially unstable and financially irresponsible to sell two vehicles that are pretty much identically the same, except they look different, and trying to sell them as number one. You'll lose sales, you'll confuse people, and what happens is, this is by trial and error. This has happened before. Dodge used to do every car company is guilty of this, but in the early days, they would try to do this. GM had this problem, and this is why they went into bankruptcy in 2009. GM had about 9 or 10 different brands. They had Pontiac, Chevrolet, Oldsmobile, they had Cadillac, Buick, Hummer, Saturn, and I'm not sure if they owned Saab completely, but that's a lot of brands. And what would happen for years, if you notice, the Chevrolet Camaro always pretty much looked like the Pontiac Firebird, and other models like the Pontiac, let's say. Well, it's amazing. There's so many, and I can't think of one. Let's say the Grand Am's body, the chassis, was a lot like the Lumina at some times. And then also the Pontiac Le Mans was pretty much the Chevrolet Geo Metro. I mean, there was a lot of cars that had cross-body platforms that just did not make any sense. Like the Chevrolet Cavalier in its late days was the identical twin, pretty much, of the Chevrolet Sunfire. It was just cars that they could have just interchanged. All they did was change the front and the rear bumpers and put different badges. Chevy put their bow tie and Pontiac put their arrowhead, and that's pretty much all it did. And it wasn't just Pontiac and Chevrolet. It was all the other brands. I mean, Saturn would do this with Pontiac at the end, the Pontiac Solstice and the Saturn Sky. Identical vehicles. All they did was change the bumpers. And this is what caused them to go into bankruptcy. So by trial and error, other car companies did this as well. I will say Dodge and Mitsubishi, when they had their partnership back in the old days, did the same thing. And this is what happens when you put too many vehicles that are identically the same. They have the same engine layouts. They have the same interior specifications. There's no luxury version. There's no, economical version. They're exactly the same cars, and they fail this way. And it took forever for big companies realized this once they were losing money, and by the time they realized it, it was too late. So they're not going to bring it to the United States, but the tracks will first launch in Mexico by the end of this year, and then Chevrolet will roll out the crossover around the world. There's no word yet on the powertrain options or the equipment that might be available in it though, but the company promises the tracks delivers on flexibility, great fuel economy, and a car-like handling that urban explorers around the world require. We wouldn't be surprised though that the same engines are found in what the Mocha windup would be for the Trax. Now, the Mocha is the Opel European version, but their engines right now are the 1.6 liter inline 4, the turbocharged 1.4 liter inline 4, or the 1.7 liter turbocharged diesel inline 4. So pretty much any of those engines over there probably will be in the Trax. There's no need to build a new engine if their engines are already doing pretty well. And these, I'm pretty sure, are refined, newly not tested, but they're newly introduced engines, is the word. So they're fairly new. They're probably a couple of years old, so they probably deliver very well on fuel economy and powertrain. But the powertrain, I should mention, will probably more or less be linked to a 6-speed automatic transmission, and will be either configured as a front wheel or all-wheel drive. So you can look forward to that in other European and developing markets. Another story I did want to go into is that more Americans are buying cars with manual transmissions. Now, American drivers, that is, have often been said to dislike cars with manual transmissions. Why? I'm not sure. I'm a fan of the manual transmission. But a new study suggests that the trend is reversing. Analysis of the publishers of the magazine USA Today reveal that, or is that a newspaper, whichever one. Newspapers and magazines are dying, people, but they reveal that the take rate on cars with manual transmissions in the first quarter of this year has been the highest since 2006. Now, that is pretty dramatic, because while the first quarter of this year is only 6.5%, I mean, that doesn't sound like a lot to call a victory for the manual transmission, but it is reportedly higher than in 6 years past. Back then, 6 years ago, Americans chose stick shifts on 7.2% of the new vehicles that were sold. In 2011, 2010, and 2008, the rate was below 4%, and in 2007 and 2009, it was only 2.9%, not even breaking the 3% margin, and 4.4% of new cars in America, respectively, were sold with clutch pedals and manual shifters. The rate has been changed back dramatically, though. I mean, in 2002, it was 8.5%, and it fell back to 8.2% in 2003. Even though more people are purchasing them, the availability of cars with manual transmissions seems to be dwindling, though. Just 19% of all new cars that are offered in America today can be equipped with a manual transmission, down from 29% from cars that were equipped with manuals in 2006. Now, exotic car manufacturers, and these are the luxury cars, people, like Ferrari, no longer even sells any cars with a manual transmission. And I reported with my old co-host Boontarn weeks ago that a technician, an engineer with Porsche, said, yeah, the manual transmission's out. 97% of all our sales are with the Tiptronic automatics or the variable timing automatics, or just the regular good old-fashioned automatic with no shift paddles or shift gates. And this is what I think is horrible. But even though those people are purchasing them, the availability of cars with manual transmissions is just, it's pretty much dead, except for that small region, but I'm glad to see it coming back. Customers, however, are becoming more interested with cars with manuals. Ford announced that in February it would be making a 6-speed manual transmission available on top-spec Ford Focus Titaniums. Now, this is pretty much the Focus Titanium is pretty much their leveled up version of the Focus. It's pretty much like their, every car has like three layers of luxury options within it. So, the Focus will be available in base, which means it really has no technology in it, but it might have, an AM, FM, CD radio, and that's pretty much it. And then there'll be, the LS, which means it's equipped with some luxury, maybe some fog lights, a little bit better stereo, and blah, blah, blah. And then maybe the LSX or the LST, whatever it would be, has a better engine, and it has all this other stuff. So usually, at least in years past, the manual transmissions only have been available in the lower trim models, but at least now it's coming up, and that's because of competition. But also, other models are coming out, like Dodge. It expects 20% of the 2013 Dodge sales will be manual transmission, so at least that's a nice thing to see. And before we end the show, there are recalls. There's never an episode of Speed where we don't have recalls, only a very few. And Recall Central, this is for the Ford and Lincoln reverse indicators, and also for Ram 1500, but this is a weird one. This is for their spare tires. Some 2011 and 2013 Ford F-150s, Ford Expeditions, Ford Mustangs, and Lincoln Navigators. Now here's the problem. The transmission range sensor on the affected vehicles may not indicate the reverse gear has engaged. Neither light or the R on the reverse cluster nor illumination. So pretty much when you shift the car into reverse, the lights in the back will not turn on. On your instrumentation panel, it won't say that it's in reverse, and the little R won't be illuminated. Whether or not the internal or exterior lights illuminate, settings in the shifter or the reverse or R will cause the vehicle to go into reverse, but they're not working properly. So the F-150, Expedition, Navigator, and Mustang all use a 6-speed automatic transmission. If the vehicle doesn't indicate that it's in reverse, it could lead to a collision or a pedestrian being struck. So pretty much you're putting it in reverse, but the car doesn't know. Okay, so the car goes in reverse, but you don't know it's in reverse because on the indicator and on the shifter, it's not showing that it's in reverse. So it's pretty much a slip gear. So you could be accelerating thinking that this has happened to some people. I won't say that it's happened to me. I don't think it has. But you put it into drive and you think you're going to go in reverse. It's sort of like when you're stepping on steps, when you're walking down a staircase and you forget that last step. This is pretty much what that is. Either you put it in reverse or it slips into reverse and you think you're going into the drive and all of a sudden you're going haywire back and you might back up to your garage door. That's the best case scenario. Or you can strike a pedestrian. That's the worst case scenario. So the fix is that starting around or give or take June 25th of 2012, Ford will contact owners regarding of the recall and have dealers inspect the necessary pieces. Now, and replace, of course, if necessary, the transmission and range sensor. Customers that are concerned can contact Ford regarding the recall number, which is 12C23 at 1-866-436-7332. That number again is 1-866-436-7332. 7332, and that's if you own a 2011 between 2011 and 2013 Ford F-150 pickup truck, the light duty model, I would assume, the Ford Expedition, the Ford Mustang, or the Lincoln Navigator, their sister company. Also, the number of vehicles affected by this one recall is 10,500 vehicles, which are being recalled, and those again are the vehicles numbered. Now, there is another one. This is for the 1998 through 2003 Ford Windstar. Here's the problem for those vehicles. Almost 60,000 Ford Windstar minivans are being recalled for a suspectability to corrode or, it's pretty much just corrosion on the rear axle, which is not good for Ford. And I will say that 1998 through 2003 was... Well, I don't know when Ford has ever had a good year, except for maybe lately, but Ford having corrosion, rust on their cars is not uncommon for me, which could lead to cracking or fracturing of a rear axle, and it could corrode the front lower control arm, attachment brackets, and the body mounts. Now, corrosion and breaking of the rear axle can lead to a loss of vehicle control, while the suspension of the lower control arms can cause loss of steering control, both of which can increase the likelihood of a crash. Now, this is Ford's statement, increase the likelihood of a crash. When your back wheels break off and your control arms, which is pretty much the shoulders of a vehicle, crash onto the ground, you're going to lose control of your vehicle, people. But the fix from Ford is that they will be beginning notifying owners around June 18th of 2012 regarding the recalls. Dealers will then inspect the rear axle and either install a rear axle reinforcement or replace the rear axle altogether. Of course, probably, and it doesn't say in the story, but I'm assuming no cost to you because it is their problem. Dealers will also inspect both the front and lower control arms and the subframe and make any necessary repairs. Both the axle and control arms will be, okay, here it is. It's completely confirmed that they will be replaced free of charge. The owners can contact Ford at that same number I gave you earlier. It's 1-866-436-7332 regarding the recall number, which in this case for the Ford Windstar is 10S13 for the rear axles. For Virginia residents or for Puerto Rico residents, it's 12S13, same number. The recall numbers are all there, so you can call Ford or contact your local dealership. Or if you bought the vehicle used, it's still a problem. So go ahead and make sure that if you own a Ford Windstar, take care of it. That, again, is taking care of about 60,000 vehicles that are on the road. And the last one for this one is the 2012 Ram 1500. Now, here's the problem for America's number 3 pickup truck. certain 2012 Ram 1500 trucks are being recalled for being equipped with an incorrectly sized spare tire. If the tires are installed on the truck, it can potentially activate the electronic stability control system. Now, every truck, I shouldn't say every truck, but every vehicle that is manufactured after 2012 must have. It is a federal law that must have a stability activation control system, which pretty much means traction control. Anything when your vehicle starts to skid out, or it starts to want to flip over, or if it's raining and your tire starts to spin and you start to go sideways, side to side, that is what your stability traction control turns on. And federal law has mandated that in 2012, every vehicle must have this equipped. Older vehicles, not so much. My little tiny pickup truck from 10 years ago does not. It doesn't have any of that. And a lot of older vehicles don't, and there's no way to add that kind of stuff. But all the new vehicles do. And so this spare tire is the wrong size, which makes me to believe that if you had a flat tire and you were on the side of the road, it wouldn't matter because the tire is not even the same size, so you'd be stuck either calling AAA if you're lucky to have them, or you'd be calling a tow service to have your vehicle towed and pay a ton of money. But the fix is that Chrysler, which is the owner of the Ram division, will begin notifying owners this month. Owners can contact Chrysler at 1-800-853-1403 regarding the recall number M14. Dealers will inspect the spare tire and repair vehicles as necessary, no free of charge, or free of charge, I should say. The number of vehicles affected are 129 Ram 1500 trucks built between January 5th to the 6th. So only about 130 vehicles affected by this recall notice. Again, that's for the 2012 Ram 1500 pickup truck. And there is one more recall I did want to save for the last of the show. This is the 2000 Hyundai Elantra, subject to the National Highway Test Safety Administration probe for the side airbag issue. Now, side airbags are standard in a lot of vehicles nowadays. They are pretty much the side curtain airbags that prevent your head from hitting the pillar arm in your vehicle if you were to get hit from side to side. But there is a problem with the 2012 Elantra from Hyundai. It has caught the attention of the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration after an airbag allegedly injured a driver in a crash. So far, the federal agency has received one complaint involving the car's side curtain airbag. The driver suffered lacerations to the face and ear after the airbag deployed, and pictures of the crashed Elantra show a metal piece poking out from the left edge of the headliner above the driver's seat. The investigation opened last week and covers about 120,000 2012 model year Elantras. A complete, detailed statement from an actual person that was involved in an accident and actually had this happen to him reads, driver side airbag deployed, and this is a more or less a highway patrol statement taken. Driver side airbag deployed and metal bracket deployed with airbag from headliner. Area also and sliced my ear in half. Could have been neck. I have pictures of the wreckage inside and out. So pretty much someone had their Elantra crashed, and the bracket that holds the airbag in place while the vehicle is, not using the airbag, obviously. When it was crashed, the bracket came loose with the airbag and slammed that person right in the face. And luckily it wasn't their neck like they stated in the statement, but it did cut their ear in half. Now, luckily it didn't cut off the entire thing, but the evaluation is nearly in its early stages, so we will know later what will happen to Hyundai, because this is affecting a lot of vehicles. This is affecting 123,000 brand new 2012 model year Hyundai Elantras. Again, that's the Hyundai Elantra for 2013, which did receive an overall 5-star crash test rating from them, but this was sort of an incident that happened later on, and they didn't really realize that it was going to happen until after the fact when they started selling the cars. So again, if you have a Hyundai Elantra from 2013, you might want to take it to a dealership. There is no word. This isn't a recall. This is more or less just a warning that the airbag has a problem with the bracket. So you might want to take note, maybe go to your dealership, ask what you can do, because again, they are responsible for that kind of manufacturing flaw. And thank you for watching Speed live on the B3 Radio Network. We webcast every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific time, that is. But you can always catch the podcast if you don't happen to catch us live in studio via YouTube, Facebook, iTunes, Twitter, and blip.tv. You can always email the show at speedradiob3@yahoo.com. Don't forget that you can always call the show. The phone lines might be down next week, but we can always take voicemails at 626-532-7154. That's 626-532-7154. And you can call, email, comment, anything you want about the show, or about this show specifically is about cars. I mean, if you can name your favorite car, the car you drive, or any questions that you have related to cars, automobiles, trucks, SUVs. We don't only do cars. It's just there's a lot of car stories, so we tend to stick with automobiles, but we also cover motorcycles, trucks, and ATVs. I am Brian Von Barrios, your host for Speed. Thank you, and make sure you tune in next week. This is the B3 Radio Network, Southern California's internet talk station.
This has been a presentation of the B3 Radio Network, a division of B3 Production Studios, a Brian Von Barrios Multimedia Filming Corporation. Visit us online at b3radionetwork.webs.com. Subscribe to our podcast feed on YouTube, Facebook, iTunes, Twitter, and blip.tv. This is the B3 Radio Network, Southern California's internet talk station.